Hello again, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about wood chips. Admittedly, I know this is the most exciting topic in the world, but it's potentially important to us vegetable gardeners. Still, I'm going to do my best to be efficient with my words and keep the runtime here under 15 minutes. So, prior to the start of the spring gardening season, I made the somewhat controversial decision to use wood chips as mulch in my vegetable gardens. Now, in a hot, dry climate like mine, a good mulch layer is vital to a productive garden as it slows the drying of soil and prevents the sun from cooking all the life out of it. Unfortunately, in an urban setting such as mine, useful organic matter that can be safely used as mulch or compost can be a bit hard to come by and is often expensive. Even grass clippings are typically in short supply during the summer in Sacramento. Increasingly, lawns are going brown as homeowners conserve water through the hottest months of the year. So, needing an affordable and easily obtainable mulch to protect my garden from the brutal summer sun, last April I ordered 4 cubic yards of shredded wood and applied it to the beds. Now, before launching into the details of my experience with wood mulch in the veggie garden, I want to address the elephant in the room: nitrogen depletion. So there's a common belief among a lot of vegetable gardeners that wood chips will deplete soil nitrogen. And if so much as a splinter comes within a mile of a garden, it's going to suck out every last atom of nitrogen, rendering the area a lifeless dust bowl till the end of time. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, and honestly, there is a sliver of truth to the myth. So while high carbon material such as wood chips won't actually deplete soil nitrogen, it can tie up soil nitrogen, rendering it unavailable to plants for some time. I'm definitely not qualified to explain soil science in detail, but a kind of children's book level explanation of how this all works can be summed up as this. The bacteria responsible for decomposing wood need a lot of nitrogen in order to do their job. Now, this temporarily reduces the amount of nitrogen available to plants, but the cool part is when these soil bacteria inevitably die, all that nitrogen gets released back into the soil and is once again available to plants. So that means wood mulch is a no-go, right? False. As long as woody material is applied only to the surface of a garden as mulch, the effects of nitrogen depletion, or rather tie-up, are negligible. It's really only when large quantities of mulch are tilled into the soil as an amendment that you run into a problem. Even then, the effects can be compensated with by applying a high nitrogen fertilizer. Anecdotally, I can confirm nitrogen tie-up is not an issue in my gardens, and that's evidenced by these broccoli plants here. Even after a season of wood chips being used as mulch and the inevitable odd handful of chips being mixed into the soil during transplanting and other usual garden activities, none of these plants are showing any signs of nitrogen deficiency. So if anyone's interested, I've linked a couple sources in the description that provide a little better insight into the issue of how woody material can tie up nitrogen. Now, with that out of the way, I'm going to move on to what I like about wood mulch in the garden. The first pro, and the primary reason I decided to give wood mulch a try, is that it's unlikely to be contaminated with persistent broadleaf herbicides. In recent years, I've been reading horror tales about gardeners purchasing straw, hay, or compost, only to have their gardens shrivel and die after the application of these products. The culprit, a family of highly persistent broadleaf herbicides known as Aminopyralids. So increasingly, apparently, the growers of hay and straw have been spraying their fields with these products in order to kill plants that aren't grasses. Unfortunately for gardeners, these chemicals are long-lasting with half-lives up to 40 days. Now, on the surface, 40 days doesn't seem that long, but given that they can kill or stunt most common garden crops in concentrations as low as parts per billion with a B, it can take years for concentrations within contaminated mulches and amendments to reach non-lethal levels. Even digestion doesn't render aminopyralids inert, and livestock that eat hay treated with them are literally pooping toxic manure. So products treated with aminopyralids are not supposed to be sold for use around edible crops, but contamination still happens via some combination of ignorance and negligence. I've provided another couple of links in the description if anybody wants to read a little bit more about how aminopyralid contamination works. So I reason that since trees aren't routinely sprayed with broadleaf herbicides, the risk of wood mulch poisoning to my garden is minimal. That said, there are some species of tree that produce phytotoxic compounds. Black walnut comes immediately to mind. So care does need to be taken to avoid mulch made from such trees. Now, the mulch I ordered was made from recycled, untreated dimensional lumber, meaning it was primarily shredded softwood, so I had few concerns about naturally toxic wood being mixed in there. I was slightly concerned that the rep at the landscape supplier from which I ordered the mulch was underplaying the potential for contamination from treated and finished wood, but these concerns turned out to be unnecessary. The second pro to wood chip mulch is that it's cheap and in some cases free. Sacramento had an exceptionally stormy winter last year, which resulted in a lot of fallen trees and subsequently a glut of wood chips. Now, if I'd owned a truck, I could have grabbed enough free wood mulch to last me several lifetimes, as the city was giving away mountains of the stuff. Being an urbanite, however, I don't regularly have any reason to own a truck, and truck rentals in my area tend to be more than the delivery charge for most of the garden supplies I need. I looked into also signing up for a chip drop, but with those, there's no control over the size or timing of deliveries. I've actually heard stories of homeowners signing up for one of these chip drops, only to end up with enough mulch to bury their entire property several times over. So the product I ultimately went with cost slightly less than $10 a cubic yard, with a minimum delivery size of 4 yards. For $40, I had enough mulch to cover all of my garden beds and then apply a good layer of mulch to the pathways in between. So pro number 3, this is a short one, wood mulch is just plain great at its job. Even during the hottest stretches of the summer, I only had to activate my drip irrigation system once or maybe twice a month. Even then, these waterings were preemptive, done the night before the start of heat waves, just in case. My plants never showed any signs of lacking water. Pro number 4 is longevity. As a surface layer, wood chips decay very slowly, especially during the dry season, so I expect my current supply to last a few seasons. Getting onto the cons, ironically, the first con on my list is longevity. The fact that wood chips last makes them usable for years, but it also means they'll be getting in my way for years. As noted earlier, wood chips are great on the garden, but not churned into it. This means mulch needs to be pushed off to the side or removed completely whenever I want to transplant starts, direct sow a crop, or amend the soil. As I was planting out our fall garden recently, it dawned on me what a time suck this part of the process actually is. The second negative I found after applying wood mulch is the stuff is a pest magnet, and I'm not talking about termites or carpenter ants. It turns out that 400 square feet of fresh wood chips, conveniently laid out in giant boxes, will quickly become a luxury toilet for every free-roaming cat in the Tri-County area. Not only are these little gifts smelly, disgusting disease vectors, the scratching and digging cats do as part of their pooping process can quickly destroy tender seedlings. I also found that squirrels love to dig and burrow into the mulch, and this also destroyed a fair number of seedlings and fresh transplants. I found that as my plants grew and filled in the beds, they became a less appealing litter box and playground for critters. But in the early season, I still had to hastily rig up makeshift plant guards out of bits of hardware cloth and chicken wire I had lying around. So that should be considered. My final entry in the con column is so minor, I actually hesitate to mention it. But to be honest, having a lot of wood chips around is just kind of annoying. They're messy and get everywhere. They were frequently being tracked into the house. They always seem to find their way into my shoes or under my sandals, and they resulted in more than a few splinters when I decided to work in the garden without gloves. None of these issues, though, are really a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind. So, given my first season experience with wood mulch in the veggie garden, will I stick with it? Honestly, I'm still undecided. While I like the low cost and lack of contaminants, I think if I found an affordable, guaranteed clean source of mulch that fully composted a little bit quicker, maybe within a season or so, I'd probably opt for that option over the wood mulch. So that's all I really have for right now. I've got a few more videos coming out in the next month. Being into the fall and winter season, things just move a little slower. But again, any of you that tuned in and then stuck around to this point, I really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching.